All right. Hello and welcome to, I believe it's episode 11 of the Jenna Hirsch podcast. Thank you, Christina, for hopping in and like leaping in this with me. You are, as I understand, a 6'2" sacral generator like myself. I've been following and we have had multiple conversations of just what shows up as resonance. Like we just have very different lives, very unique, different lives that probably wouldn't quote unquote relate to each other, except our resonance between what we're up to and how we're up to and what we're up to as individuals continues to speak volumes to each other. At least that's my experience, what you're up to on the planet. So I believe we've been in each other's corners for 2, 3 years now, if not anything, just lurking online, having conversations in Messenger. And so this is really our first time really digging deeper into the co-creation process. And I will say on my side of this fence, watching you show up every day to tackle how to have the conversation around really quote unquote the Middle East, which correct me if any of my words don't work too. Just how to even hold any of that with our current where we're at currently, all of that. I know that's really what shines on your heart. If there's something louder for you that you want to share and talk about, know that that's totally game too. Just wanted to start. That's where I'm at with what I see you're up to, changing the world with how you see things.
Yeah, I mean, Middle East wise,
Yeah.
obviously, it's more focused on what's happening with Palestine and Israel right now. And just, I think it's been a wake-up call for a lot of people, just in terms of liberation and how all of our liberation is intertwined, and also to make us, to influence us, to have a hard look at our past, even our ruthless past, and seeing how we can move forward in a different way. Like whitewashing doesn't work, like with settler colonialism or anything. It's the same thing that happened to Native Americans when white people came to Turtle Island. And once you start seeing the similarities, it's, you can't unsee that. And I think too, it's the first, what's people have called like war. It's not a war because, Palestinians don't have like an army or a navy or air force or anything to combat. So it's not really a war, even though it's called that. It's conveniently called that. And I forgot where I was going specifically with that. But it definitely causes us to shed a light on how, again, all our liberation is intertwined. Also, like Black, Indigenous people of colors, struggles here within the United States as well, are linked up to that as well. And it's what's happening inside of us is what's happening outside of us, and what's happening outside of us is happening inside. So a lot of times we've been really focused on doing the work all on the inside, but that's like trying to work inside of a vacuum, and we need to do both at the same time. We need to work on our inside and work on our outside. If we don't work on community, you can make change, but like the bigger change is going to be expanding, and we're being asked to hold a lot more, oh, that's what I was going for. So it's the first, like what people call as war that has been televised,
Mm.
that we're actually seeing live streamed happening. And, some people don't like this word, but it's a genocide, what's happening there. And to call it what it is, it's also sheds a light on our past. Where's that happened for us? And if we are looking away from it, what in our lineage, has influenced that in our own settler colonialism, like how we have been colonized to
Mm.
look at things or to not look at things and just, oh, it's going to go away. We're not going to look at it. It's going to go away. No, it's not, and if you really want to do the big changes, you have to also speak out. You can't just stay here and think, oh yeah, the world's going to change. The world's going to change. And I'm going to pray it away. Like, people, and Christian, they have the quote and, praying the gay away. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
Praying things away doesn't work. Yes, it has massive changes, but you also need to take action on that. And that's the part that I think sometimes people don't connect with. They think, oh, I can make changes on the inside and that's enough, but it's not really changes on the inside if you're not, changing on the outside as well. Yeah.
You hit so many of like my core tenets, and just thank you for the way you articulated that. There's something I live by, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And really,
Mm.
what I hear too is we've lived in a world that's so divided from that, with our little sheltered realities that work for us and pretend these other people don't exist, because we can keep our igloo of goodness, and the skin color obviously being the dominant force that's created that delusion or seclusion. And
And
it's
class is another thing that
yeah,
has
yeah,
created
class
that
too.
as well.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. And also
Yeah.
too, I will just upfront, I know I'm ignorant when it comes to language. I love being corrected to be more accurate. For those that have done the research of what actually works collectively, language is so unique. And so I will flippantly speak and just know I love being corrected on all topics always. So just full permission there.
That's
Uh,
part of like learning how to be an ally. And that's another thing that everybody needs to remember, that it's okay to make mistakes. You know, you're
yes.
going to make mistakes on a journey of speaking up and a journey of actually living what you want to see in the world. So you need to allow that and take it with grace. Perfectionism is such, like, especially in our white culture, it's like such a huge thing. And we're so afraid of making mistakes. And that's the journey of the ally. That's the journey
Mm.
of us creating a world together with everyone
Mhm.
that serves everyone equally and not just the few and the privileged.
And
Yeah.
I hear too is that, and those that are looking for allyship, it is learning to, I guess what's there is just context for understanding once that allyship is there. I think it's the responsibility of the ally to be a safe space and work through that themselves. It's just creating that dialogue of that doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good. This is not really true. And you're saying things that are lies to me. And so it actually hurts the body, and people will not understand that words are literal quote unquote spells. They control the nervous system. And when you've been traumatized and wounded, especially when you are in existence that people don't want you to be on this planet, like I haven't had to necessarily walk that at the global level. There's not people praying today for me to not exist because I'm a sinner. Like I don't live with that. I don't live because my skin color. I mean, there's probably something externally. It's just the culture of America. If you're in that, we're in Pride Month this month and all of that, like there's people that don't want them to exist, whoever we define as that. Either way,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that softening to say I'm going to say it the wrong way, and then the ally example of me like being like thank you for correcting me. Like I want to be a safe space where you can correct, because in the wrong environment, coming from me, Christian culture, if you correct, it's an attack back. And so it's like
Right.
that is not a safe thing. And so how do we create safety together? And that's for me the most powerful relationships I have, and quite honestly why I'm quite
Mm.
loud on the internet. It's like who will show up and share themselves and come toe to toe with me. As you'll see, when you come toe to toe with me, I'm just going to be nice. Like I'm not actually attacking anything. I'm just speaking very boldly, very strong claims to see who wants to have that kind of dialogue where they stand up and share what's real and true for them too. And really the experience of saying what's loud, or saying what's loud, saying what's real, saying what's true in a what feels like is a loud way. Like it's like they don't want you to be loud. I don't know like what that perception is. It's just like when you beat a drum, people are like, will you please shut up? It's like, no, I'm canary in the coal mine. I'm beating a drum and I'm not going to shut up for a reason. When are we going to come together and listen? And I don't know if that's something you experience with much of what you say. It's like, how do we get people to listen? And that being a dancey space in that.
Yeah. When you step outside of the norm, sometimes people step away a little bit from you. They're like, oh, I don't want that association to a certain thing, because there's such a primal
Mm.
attachment to being part of the pack
Mhm.
and to not being ostracized. And that's why too, sometimes whenever we speak out or say things, especially when we do it for the first time, or the first times, and we get what we feel are yelled back at or something
Mhm.
like that, we take it personally and we feel ostracized. We feel like, oh, we're doing it wrong. We should just step back and be silent. That was a lot of my life, was like stepping back and being silent and being
Mhm.
quiet. And I, to me, part of the connection of not of feeling part of a community is recognizing your lineage within inside of you and the foundation that you have, and knowing that your whole lineage has always worked for your liberation.
Mm.
They are the foundation for that. And even if they showed up in your history different ways that you are not congruent with, they might have shown up those ways just to show you exactly what you want and you need in this life.
Mm.
So we do need to thank them, and we do need to, honor that, hey, they showed me how I shouldn't be, you know, like, or a different way. Otherwise, if I wouldn't have had that in my lineage, how would I have not known, you know, like, how racist, you know, like, for instance, my white grandfather could have
Mhm.
been one of my white grandfathers, you know, and really experienced what that looks like, and to not do it and to do it differently. We have, yeah, we go back thousands and thousands of years, and then it came up to now for us specifically to be formed, and we were formed and we came to this time like for a specific reason. Like, our ancestors prayed for us. You need to remember that, you know, like, they worked for
Mhm.
us. They were always working for our liberation,
Mhm.
and sometimes they might have had, you know, their right intentions in mind, but done it a different way. And so we get to learn from that, and we get to build from that, you know.
Mhm.
So finding the community inside and connecting with that is one way that you can know that you, like, you're not alone on this journey.
Mhm.
You have your whole ancestry behind you,
Mhm.
inside of you, because your DNA is passed on. When your mom had you, your mom was alive. She literally passed on her cells, you know, like, and your father's cells too, like that. And there's information, you know, like, there's information for generations that you can connect with and you can unlock, that you can use for that purpose. I feel like we're multi-purpose beings, you know, but like for that purpose of working toward the highest good, not just for yourself, but for everyone, you know.
Mhm.
And that's why, like, for instance, like, personal manifestation, great. You also need to include the collective in there and community in there, because if it's just good for you, you need to make sure that it's good for everyone, because, like, what kind of world do you want to create?
That,
Yeah.
and you created a reel, a TikTok on that, the vision board one time that I saw that just rocked me. It's like we're creating vision boards with, you know, whitewash patriarchal content, and that is the
From
vision.
magazines
And
that are
like we're like
patriarchal.
literally
Yeah.
manifesting patriarchy.
Classist and
Like
yeah.
it's like this is, do we not see what
Yeah.
we're creating? And that is the power of the mind. That is the power of the body. Our reticular activating system. We're learning the science behind that and learning that we truly have that kind of power. And I really, I mean, the concept of ancestor, just because I'm so resistant to some of the spiritual and woo and the ways that it can go in all the directions. What you really drew home and brought home for me is that ancestor conversation of like, no, literally people gave their lives praying for the future generation to have access to what we're doing. And I really see like they prayed so we could act. They prayed so we could be here. Like we have now the internet, a barrier where I don't have to feel like if I say the wrong thing, you could make me not be here tomorrow. Like that, these conversations we can now have in spaces and change the planet where in person was not necessarily safe, or you just couldn't even come across like the medium of the internet and AI and language and bringing together language. There's so much there too. Just we're actually able to come together. And so how do we actually come
Yeah.
together? The tribe stuff is so primal and so ancestral, and rightfully so. Like that's survival mind. Like it got us here. And yes, I would have loved for some of the bad to not happen. I want that to go away in our generation. And it happened. We can't undo those actions. Like, how do we live with those actions and simply learn from it and create the contrast? Okay, that was really bad. How do we create the contrast? Because we can see it and listen to the people who have had it really bad, who can speak out. Like, I think that's what's there for resource for me too. It's like,
Right.
how do you create someone who has been so disempowered and simply speak out the opposite and then do the work to meet those needs for that person, every person, and not put the person who's been traumatized on the, you know, I have to now create a purpose and a platform to help what hurt me compared to coming around someone who's been hurt and changing based on that reality. So I don't know if that's translating at all out there. It's just what's coming through.
Yeah, we all are, you know, we all are weaving a blanket together, you know, and it's about like connecting the threads. And even if you know, everything is information. And even if you can't, if you feel like you can't do something specific around for it now, just educating yourself and educate, you know, like, and listening, yeah, to other people's stories, especially those that are more oppressed or have had different experiences, because the standard right now is the white person's experience. And that's why we call people, you know, Black. And that's, you know, like we don't say white people, you know? Like we say, oh, the standard is this. And it's just like the white person's standard is this, actually. We need to start calling it what it is, you know, like,
Mhm.
or the white males, you know, like standard is this, because obviously, you know, like with patriarchy is part of that whole challenge that we are trying to move through and to come with more equality for. But one thing that you brought up in there too, that where I started smiling is like, yeah, we're all here for it's all an experiment, you know,
Mhm.
going through this life. And that's another thing, like while also like, you know, taking it seriously, you know, like how we build and expand and connect and create a better world for everyone. It's also an experiment. So it's okay if you fall. And then it made me think of like, of course, human design, how
Oh
it's a
yeah,
human
that's
design
exactly it.
experiment.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Like,
always an
maybe Rob
experiment.
was
Go test
onto
it for
something.
yourself.
I mean, maybe he was onto something with those words. I don't know. Like, it's just a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. I agree, and I really do live from that. It like it really the combination of this is an experience that I'm having, and it is an experiment that is happening. And so being able to walk with experience and experiment, like the context of those two, has been really powerful for me. And we do really grasp onto the intensity of what life looks like and how we want it to be. And what's fascinating too is like we live with such fear of death, of we don't want these things and we're so against them, when there is a reality that's like, okay, if we actually are against them, like here are actions we can take. It's just like our systems are like clinged onto the edge. And so it's like, how do you pry people off? So there's actual action taken in alignment with the desired outcome. Like we can't even take action in with, like, at least in my experience too, I haven't necessarily been able to take action in alignment to the desired outcome. I am in a sense, in a roundabout sense, with it comes to actually doing this with other people, being effective, all the things, like what's in my heart as I know would be the most effective thing, not happening. And it's like for me, and much of what my concept of helping helpers heal, it's like when people go through traumatic experiences and find the low lows, like they now are traumatized in a way. They're, amygdala is firing, their PTSD, all these kind of things. And it's like, for me, it's wanting to create a safe space to heal. Quite honestly, there's a tie into this too. I know, I believe pretty confidently we first connected with the Fear to Fuck It community. And it's like, okay, there is that liberation and there's not the other side of safety and restoration. And so when we have just one, like, great, that got us here. We learned all the hard ways. It's just, do we have to keep hurting humans when we have the awareness? Do we have to keep doing these things when we have learned through this experiment? The outcome of this experiment comes out with this, like, here's my science theses. Like, can we look at it at least through my personal experience and learn from it? Or do we have to create a whole new space where that's considered, kind of thing? So I don't know if safety is something that shows up for you, especially in the conversation of navigating people, quite honestly, in a space today, are don't eat, like, safety is not a thing. Like those inside of the, I guess, genocide, if I were to say correctly based on what you shared, like safety is not even a like gone, like not even a thing. So I don't know how safety shows up. It's a conversation I'm kind of always having or being inside of.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of the things, like, I feel like whenever we have hard conversations, we need to, especially when it involves like things like this, where people have such, you know, sometimes hard stances for, because like, for instance, many people in Israel, like they went through, their ancestors went through World War II and the Holocaust. And so they have trauma that's stored up. And I think the unsafety of that, they haven't been able to process it, is coming out now. And that's why it's like, oh, fire, 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 you know, because it hasn't been processed, you know, yet. And one thing that is really important with having those conversations, I feel like, is to connect with first, what are the things that we all want in this world? Like, we all want safety. We all want shelter. We all want community. We all want clean food, clean water. Okay, so starting the conversation with that and finding the ways that we are connected before we go in deeper, like creating that safety experience with the both of us, so we can have some ground to stand on, so we can weave a little bit together, so that when things get hard in the conversation, we can connect back to, hey, we both want the same things. So
Mhm.
even if we have to take leave of the conversation and come back, because some of them are very much like multi-conversations, you have to go, you have to take care of ourselves. There's reasons why we're doing nervous system work, like why we're doing emotional work, while we're doing like communication work with our communication and everything. And I feel like this is part of it. So we can all move through this together. If we don't, it's just going to get shoved down again, and then it's going to come up with another face, and we're going to be like, where did that? I thought we finished with that. And it was like, no, you really didn't go through it, because
Yeah.
you really didn't meet it. And it sucks because it's hard,
Yeah.
but you know, we we have to have those challenging conversations. And that actually, one thing that I have found with experiencing speaking up for like the people in Palestine and Congo and Sudan and Myanmar and all the people who are being oppressed, is that when your heart breaks open by what you're seeing, your heart opens. And having an open heart is so important. So even if I've felt so much grief, and collapsed on the floor, like my work is also in keeping my heart open
Mhm.
and continuing to that. And there are hardcore people, like I call them hardcore, but it's like, okay, they're so far into the fight that they're fighting the same way that oppressors fight. And
Mm-hmm.
that is not how we're going to solve it,
Hmm.
is by taking up the tools of the oppressor and using them on the oppressor. We are going to solve it in different ways, like we need to remind ourselves to have love lead, like it hurts my heart when I see anyone die from the war, or from war or violence, because like I'm like, wow, they had family. They have people that care about them. And I understand how people can be misled, like, and believe certain things, because look on your life, you grew up believing certain things, and then you were like, oh, the veil lifted off of your eyes and you see it differently. So then you can have compassion for these people who never had their own veil lifted,
Mm.
so we know that we can go through, doing things in a different way and meeting it in a different way.
Well, and I see two things. One, the experience of it's not necessarily in our conversation that we're looking to partner with one side. It's simply we can see, and I don't know if this is unique to our necessary 6-2 positions, like what we've done, what both sides could have access to, like what every human could come access to. And there's just for me, kind of mother bear energy of who's the underdog at this
Mother bear,
stage,
yeah.
so that we can have just an equal playing ground for both, whatever is fair, not that, anything's fair in those dynamics. Inside of that, I also saw too, kind of like the game where they like whack-a-mole. And it's this
Yeah.
experience of us like playing like whack-a-mole and all these things when the pain is external. And those of us who have discovered the veil
Yeah,
lifting,
it's the pattern. The game's the pattern,
it
like,
is like
yeah.
it's like that. And it's like, oh, I could put the palette down and I could figure out why I want to keep playing this game compared to playing the game. Like the work then becomes this internal, who am I? Why do I want to play the game? What's in me that wants to play the game? And there is,
Yeah.
for me, a lot of agendas that I believe that are very strategic that people may not see. One for me has been very clearly being very loud and proud as I get to discover the embodiment of the people who follow me. If I'm quote unquote the oppressor or someone who's angry or someone who's mean, how do you handle someone who's mean? Because that's when we can actually go out and have a conversation with people who are oppressing people. If you treat me in a way that doesn't work for me, then we're not going to be able to go have a dialogue with someone who could actually change and from that overpowered position. And I want to have conversations with people that are in power. And so I spent a lot of my time quote unquote fighting people on the internet simply to discover, I like keep playing the pattern to figure out what in me keeps getting created and discovering what's driving the human behavior. What is the human mechanisms that are causing the person to play the game, so I can speak to those as clear as possible. So I don't know if anything shows up in
Yeah.
there. Just,
Well, I mean, what comes up again is that experiment thing. And I know everybody has different roles to play too,
Mhm.
so I want to honor that too. So a lot of times when I speak, people are like, oh, not all people need to speak up, and not all people, and blah, blah, blah. And yes, to a certain extent, I agree. And also too, like there's a seesaw, okay, so I had this example. I was driving my kids to the play school one day, and I accidentally put the car in neutral. And I live in Western North Carolina, where we have hills, and my car was on a hill. I let go of the brake, and the car rolled back. And my eldest was like, whoa, we rolled back. And I put it in drive and drove up, and I was like, yeah. And I had this realization that, so it's a slope, like, so the oppressor has this weight on the
Mhm.
seesaw, and the oppressor up here. And if you're neutral, then the neutrality actually just rolls down to the side of the oppressor.
Mhm.
So if you are neutral in these experiences and are not saying anything but feel something, or you're
Mhm.
not doing anything on the sidelines to help to change things or having the conversations that are so important to have, then you are just rolling back on the side of the oppressor, and there's no neutrality. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm not even part of the seesaw. And it's like, if you have a human body, you are, because we're in a land, we're in duality,
Yeah.
like, oh, but life is just a dream. And it's like, yeah, but we all create this dream together. Don't you want to make it amazing for everyone?
That. And then,
Like so you're just gonna like cup out of the dream, but you have a human body. Yes, and there's so much yes ands.
yes, it is
Anyway,
this, like, coming from the religious cool side, that bubble that is there. It's like there is a spiritual bubble also saying the same words as those that are quote unquote fighting for neutrality by, like, people will say like non-duality. I'm like, no, it is duality. There's no non-duality. Like, there's no, like, you are at this stage in a polarity dance and you are living and breathing today. So you're doing something with your body. There's a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I don't have it quoted or memorized enough to quote it. He's part of the what took down Hitler kind of thing. And essentially he says inaction is action, to not speak is to speak. And that has been for me really powerful. And really I saw too newly in your sharing
right,
is someone who comes in and says, it's not my role to speak. Okay, so I'll do your work for you. Because you, like, I have to do double the work until you chose to come up and at least play in the neutrality game. Because that's actually, and Gene Key's Gate 56, I believe, talks about peace. And it says it comes from, so conflict is the shadow, diplomacy is the middle, and then peace is the acidic frequency, what we're all working towards. And that you actually have to be diplomatic in order to achieve peace. And so that means being the opposite of whatever is being presented. It's not a matter of keeping the peace. It's actually in opposition to what is quote unquote the normal, what is oppressing, what is doing that. And you have to be in
right.
opposition. You have to quote unquote create conflict. I just feel like there's, how do we do this in a way that actually supports everyone and doesn't be like, well, you should be doing nonviolent communication right now and like shut the fuck up kind of thing. So how do we create spaces where voices can be heard? And that's really the embodiment of this podcast. It is, everyone is a world changer. Our breathing today is tied to our central nervous system. Like, I just learned that fact this
And
week.
we all breathe the same air,
Yes. And I think we
so
still want it to be
we
here.
all
Like,
share the world.
yes, exactly. We all share the
Yeah,
world, we all share the same air. And when it's not here, we're not here. So I'd like to keep living. If you'd like to keep living, like, let's all have a conversation together. And the
right.
conversation too inside of that spiritual world is, you have everything within the whole concept of being able to be monk on a mountain and peace and all that stuff. And I had this epiphany yesterday. I'm sitting out idyllic in the middle of nowhere, what everyone dreams of. And I'm like, why am I here if I'm not for another person, especially when I know that they're going to die today? How do I just sit here and do that from a place? Because then you go and they're like, well, you're not someone's saver. You can't save them. It's just this, like, I don't know, registration against my action. So I don't know if you see anything inside of that, like trying to move. And then all you have is people that are like, you can't change anything. You can't do anything. It's all orchestrated. It's all a pattern. I don't know if you live inside of that conversation or not.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you have to hold it both, like you have to hold the joy with the pain, like I, sometimes I feel it's interesting, like, yeah, I can go to a creek and I can go and join myself, and then, yeah, I think of the people in Palestine or the people in Sudan and Congo. So yeah, it's like, where can you take action? And, also joy is revolutionary, but like, we again, it's like expanding and holding it both. So it's not saying like, oh, well, I'm just going to live my best life with me, which means buying plastic cups and, like going to places that are exploited by white supremacy, where they have bought up all the properties, and I'm just going to enjoy the place while the natives there, like the native people there are struggling. It's being aware, it's holding it both, like being aware and what can you do? So if you do go there and go vacation there, like what are things that you can do or bring awareness to, or to help that community or to advocate for that community as well, and I believe that part of this time, it's a very uncomfortable time because we're weaving new blankets,
Mm.
and it's like we're weaving community blankets. We're weaving new blankets inside of us for how we want to be differently than how our ancestors was. We're weaving a different blanket globally for all of us. And so it's an uncomfortable time because yeah, a lot of us are being, I guess you could say, like, put on the spot, and in a certain sort of a way. And you
Cool. And
yeah,
there's
go ahead.
we're at the 8-minute mark, so I just wanted to give you
Yes.
that up because time does freaking fly. And I
Yeah.
really see something that a picture I come back to often, tying in with the whole rack-a-mole picture I have now based on your sharing. Like that's just changing my world when it comes to playing with the pattern. And I almost see like double dutch, where it's like we have the old program and we're writing a new one. And so we have both programs running. And so when you're just like, I'm gonna monk on the mountain, sit over here and do whatever, or I'm gonna wait for Jesus to come back, however that's there, and not
Yeah.
actually take any action. And like again, inaction is an action. It's just to discover, to learn, to experiment, to play consciously, to learn that I'm not going to wake up and go to sleep and learn nothing because I was not present to my reality. Like how
Yeah.
present can I be? How much can I be learning, growing, shifting, changing? And there is an opportunity for people, if they truly want to be a world changer, to have a platform in seconds, have
Yeah.
millions of followers in seconds. And that's also caution too. Like, do you have the nervous system to hold that? So actually that's a question too, with what you've been up to, what you're taking on, and the stand that you're being. And a concept I've had too is some of the community shared this, like, we're on die on the hill conversations. So like that's die on the hill conversations. Like these are things that we will fight for. And so we're gonna have some heated conversations. It's a heated conversation in a chat messenger
Yeah.
conversation or in a Facebook post. Like, is it really, like, we have no comparison to actually living in physical threat for those that have us in this conversation.
And that's the thing, is like we think that because it's happening over there that it's not going to come over here. But the more that you see oppression happening and these things happening and you don't say anything, the closer it comes to you. Because if they're able to do it over there and we don't stop it, then it is going to come closer. We think we're in this bubble. And, like, the truth is, for instance, just as an example, Israel's military is testing weapons on Palestinians that they then sell to other governments to use against their own citizens for surveillance, these robot dogs, these drones that shoot, like, and if you look, there are so many cops in the United States that are trained by Israel, like, I mean, and I'm not saying this to create fear. I'm saying this to just create awareness. The
Mhm.
more aware we are, and the more grounded that we can be in our awareness, the more we can make changes. You don't want to go into frozen or survival mode for it. And you may have to nurture yourself a little bit if you feel yourself do that. And that's totally cool.
Yeah.
We're all working towards that, but know that, it's closer than it seems.
Oh
It's
yeah. And
closer
actually,
than it seems.
I've got
And if we're working for liberation for other people, we're working for your liberation too.
that
Yeah.
for everyone, including the ones that don't like me. Like, I'm working for you,
Yeah.
I'm working for your kids. I'm here because you matter equally. Oh, you just opened up so much. And so this is actually one of the angsty reasons why I'm so angsty on the internet, is coming from fear to pocket community, that I'm like, yo, we're trained for this. Like, we know how to hold these conversations. We know about this. Like, why can we not just stay in a room and just all talk together? But I got to wait on free will and all the timing and the stars and the moon and whatever's there, and trusting
Yeah.
and knowing the energy. And I see it through human design as a pattern, and it's just a pattern. And I would love if you wanted to add any like selling on this aspect of human design, how it works for you, if it is something that's leveraged. B, because we're at the 4 minute mark, would love for anything in regard to who you are, what you're up to, how people, I know you're doing certain resources that have spoke really loudly to my system. So very attuned to what you're offering feels good in my body. And so is a resource that would help me. And then anything else just to wrap us up, is kind of, I feel like I really want to pass the mic on all of that and let you run.
Okay, I'll try to cover all the bases. Well, one thing that I was thinking is, the people, I feel like a lot of people are still stuck in the capitalistic, money-centric system. And, yes, we are in capitalism and we need to create a human-centric system as well as we go alongside of it. And one thing that I keep finding myself falling back into the pattern is like, how can I thrive in capitalism? Oh, but capitalism isn't functional, So like, how do I be functional in an unfunctional society? And I realized that I need to thrive within myself, you know, within my world. And I need to remember that I helped to create this, you know,
Mhm.
instead of seeing like, how can I fit into capitalism and survive, you know, and make the money and, you know, then do all this stuff, because then I'm like limiting myself and putting myself in a little bit of hole. So like honoring that. In regards, um, to human design, I mean, yeah, you know, like I connect for sure, like with the 6-2 vision, you know, like we have the long vision, the long ahead. And people, I also have like the genius to freak streak, you know, like where, yeah, like you, and we may say things that seem off the wall, and yet at the same time, like it can be genius, you know, like it's genius too. And again, like the long vision that we have. I believe like human design is a great guide, just like anything. Don't get attached to it, and let it define you. See, just it's another tool. You know,
Mhm.
we have so many tools available for us, and it was like another like life coaching experience for me.
Yeah.
So like I think human design is amazing,
I'm glad you mentioned
and
that
it
because
served me so properly. Yeah.
it helps, it serves, and it is that like trepidation of like, if you turn this into anything, it traps us again. It doesn't actually liberate us. Like I really see whether it's us, we, whoever it come by way of what Ra created, it's a tool for us to leverage to be liberated from a tool that needs to be leveraged to be liberated. Like it is this cancel each other out. And so,
Yeah.
so much there. And yeah.
Oscillating between
Yeah.
like using the system, getting fused, okay, taking it out, you know, like and becoming free from it. Okay, where, you know, does it apply and how can I use it? And then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So with 2 minutes left, I'd love for you to share. I know I did see an offer. I don't know if that's something you're still offering, just anything inside of that as the tools you offer are valuable.
Yeah, right now I'm offering a Meet Your Fears, Rewrite Your Life workshop, and it's all about, okay, so many times we want to bypass or gaslight ourselves into just staying positive and doing positive things, but we don't actually connect with what's subconsciously running. So for me, for instance, like waking up, going, you know, some people meditate first thing in the morning, but for me, it's really important for me to connect with my fears. What are my fears coming up for this day? What are my fears going through now? And write them down and connect with them. Because if we don't bring them to the surface, they're running things in the background and they're weaving inside how we go and do life. So I don't have a date set yet, but I'm going to do this workshop with people, and it goes not just with your life, but also with the collective too. So like it's doing the work for both, you know, what are your fears inside both, and like how can create something different. And we're going to do a little somatics, we're going to do a little writing, we're going to do a little art, we're going to break out into groups and connect with community, with each other, because sometimes when you speak these things out loud, you end up finding, yeah, more community and camaraderie together.
Yes. You do have less
Yeah.
than a minute, so we'll probably chop
Yes.
you off. I'll have the details
Yeah.
down below. We're going to continue the conversation. I want to know more,
Thank
beyond
you so
more. Thank
much,
you for being
Jenna.
here today. We're getting a huge ball rolling. I'm
I
beyond excited
appreciate
to
you.
have more. Big, big, big love. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.